Can anybody hear me? Maria, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. For some reason, I
Oops.
couldn't hear you earlier.
Oh, sorry. Hey, everyone, this is Will. I've been talking to myself. Let me know what questions you have. As always, you guys can use the raise hand feature. You can ask your question in chat, or ask it in the Q&A section. Either way, we will unmute you, let you ask your question, or restore, sort of expound on your question, and then work to get you an answer. Okay, we got a question from Chris here. Interested in seeing an example using XML serialize and deserialize. Chris, I want to give you the opportunity to talk if you want. Are we implying the use of maybe some sort of integration here where we're getting XML or JSON back?
Yeah, so what I have is a project where we're receiving an XML file that has rule set data in it, and
Okay.
we want to take that into decisions, deserialize it, store it in decisions, data structure format, and and allow users to manipulate that data, change the rules, and then at a later time serialize it to make a configuration file to be sent offsite.
Oh, okay. So decisions gets a file, needs to turn the file to text, needs to deserialize the text to an XML. Let's just start there. And then once we get that. Okay, so no, that's a wonderful question. Let's go ahead and sort of workshop what that could look like.
Great.
Let me create a folder for myself here. It's now February. This root. All right, Lunch and Learn 2.1 and XML project will be my folder name. Okay, so let's go find some XML. So simple XML example. XML examples, W3 schools. Do a simple XML file. Wonderful. Okay, so this is a simple XML file. So I'm going to go quickly create this file. Be the same XML file with an error. What is this? Yeah. So okay, let me see. Let's save this as an XML document. Okay, note XML. So first things first, I'm gonna build my flow here, and this will be receive and deserialize XML file. And on this flow, I'm going to assume this flow gets passed a file. So I'll go to the start step, click input data, show editor, and I'll say XML file. The type will change from string to file data, which is our file type. And now that I have this flow, what I'm going to do is search for bytes, and I'm going to find get string from bytes. Now this step will let me transform the contents of my file into a single string. So I have bytes here as an input to this string. I'll go to select value from flow. I will then expand XML file to get to the byte array and select contents and select done. So if I run this now, let's go ahead and confirm really quickly our behavior is correct. So I'm going to save this, click debug. I'm going to create a unit test for myself here. So I'll bring note XML into my unit test, maybe. There we go. Save this as a unit test. Now it'll live on the left-hand side here, and I can run this. Okay, if I can click the step and look at input and output data, you can see my serialized sort of garbage string at the top, and output of this is my XML type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at output data and not including the quotes. I'm going to get a string copy here, and I'm going to build a data type for my XML data structure. So I'm back in my designer folder. I'm going to click create data types integration, come down to XML JSON, click create types from XML. I'll paste my sample XML in, and I'll name this thing, I'll call this external config workflow object or something terribly named like that. And I'll click create. Now it's going to generate a new data type for me in decisions that I can deserialize from or serialize to, or vice versa, whichever the right way to say that might be. So let's give this a second for the backend to compile some code. Okay, you can now see XML data structure, external config workflow object here. If I come back into my flow, what I'm going to find is a deserialize step. So right now, if I look, I have the XML string, but I don't have an object for my XML, which is what I need my XML deserialize for. So XML type here, I'm going to search for my type. I always forget the name. If I just search for XML, XML type, oh stink, what did I name this thing? Let me search for note. There it is, external config. So that's my type note. String to deserialize will be select value from flow, and I'll get the get string from bytes1 output, which is the default output name of the get string from bytes1 step. Now, if I click done here and then debug my flow again, I can reuse my input data. I get an error there. Okay. Path error. There was an error in the XML document. Okay, it doesn't like my XML document. Let me look at my XML document really quick. Off screen here. Okay, what's wrong with this? Invalid character at line 2, position 1. Let's see here. Let's just try to save this as a different type of file and replace it here really quickly. Let me come back. Let me update the file. Choose the file, which is called new5 now, and save my test and run it. Enjoy. What's wrong with this thing? Error. Error not XML document. Hexadecimal value is an invalid character. Line 2, position 1. There's no hexadecimal value in this thing. Hold on. What am I passing in here? All right, this one's UTF-8. Let me modify my step here and use get string from UTF-8 bytes. Let me just try this really quick. Let's see if this does anything. Connect my error path. Let me try this now. Same thing, huh? Joy, what's wrong with this file? 2.1. Line 2, position 1. Line 2, 1 is note. What if I get rid of the XML version and just do note? Sorry, let me just try to troubleshoot out loud here a bit. Let me re-select my file. It's 12:15, that's me. Okay. Doesn't like that the XML file has the XML header in it for whatever reason. Something to sort out. Anyways, so now what you can see is I pass in my string to deserialize, and outside of that, I get an actual honest to goodness object that I can use in my flow. If I look at the data explorer, you can kind of see how this transformation occurs. I can look at get string from bytes output that comes out of this step and into the XML step. And if I look at XML file, if I look at The output is named XML deserialize output. Let me see here. What is it not showing? No. Well, you can see I have an output. It's named, it's ignore. That's why. So this will be deserialized XML. There we go. Now under Data Explorer, I have deserialized XML, and this has the properties of my XML file. So Chris, any questions about how we got to this particular point? And apologies for that sort of slight little character encoding detour.
No, that was useful. I'm glad to see error condition like that pop up because I'm sure I'll see them as well. And no, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, interested in seeing the other half of it.
So walk me through again, because after doing that, I forget where to go next. So we have an XML object that we can interact with in the flow now that is deserialized. What would you like to see next?
So now that you have it, as an object in decisions, I want to see the other flow, which would be you take those objects and now you serialize them to make an XML file to output.
Oh, okay. Then really all we're going to do, this is pretty straightforward. We're just going to find the serialize step, XML serialize. And one of the things we can actually do is, are we sending a file or the actual object back out?
It's going to be an XML file is what I'm after.
Okay. So then let's go ahead and create an output here, which will be called updated XML. This will also be type file data. And then what I'll do is, let's just do something to make this a little bit. I'm going to put a form in the middle of it just to, this could be saved to a database. This could be part of an assignment. What I want to do though is on my deserialize step, I have a property here called from. I'm going to update the from as it flows through here. So I'm going to create a new form. On this form, I'm going to put a single button. And on this form, I'm going to drop a single text box called from value or something. Leave everything else the same. As always, on my demonstrations, it'll be very ugly. The from value, I'm going to map in from deserialize XML from. And what I'm going to do is on the output, I'm going to say update the from value with whatever the user enters or passes through if they decide not to actually update. So I'll say change value from. So XML object, so file comes in, turns into a string gets deserialized. That object, deserialized object is passed through the form for updates. And then what is going to happen here is we're going to do the same thing as we did with our serialize. So here's our note. On the XML serialize step, we will, object to serialize will be select from flow, deserialize XML. And it doesn't like that because of why. Let me save and close and see what's wrong with that. Selected path is not valid. Jeff, oh, that's the wrong type. It's not Jeff test one. It is external config workflow object. And we're passing in deserialize XML. So we can see if we look at our output, done, there's two output paths. You can see done and error here. Done, output, type string XML serialize. We'll search for byte again, and we'll say convert string to byte array. That's not what I want. I want get bytes from string, excuse me. And then what I'll do is connect this to my end step here. And on the end step, I'm going to do build data on my updated file. And what you'll see, I'm going to pass a custom file name here. Just I'll name custom file name. Now XML serialize is going to pass out XML serialize output, which is a string. And I'm going to pass that into the get bytes from string step. So this will be XML serialize one output. This passes out get bytes from string one output. And what I'm going to do is on the contents property of my file data, I'm going to select and pass in get bytes from string one output. So now that I have all of this in place, I can run this, run my unit test. It'll show me Janny. I'll save this. And what should, if we look at our input data here, we should be able to see Janny in the from address 2 from Janny 1. And then outside of our flow here is going to be, we passed in a file. There's a file coming out of this flow called custom file name with the updated XML as a function of that. So what we would do, I'm going to remove my flow just to kind of show how this could work. Or my form, excuse me, is now you're going to need to call this as some sort of service. At least I'm assuming you're going to need to call this as a service. So we built our flow. It can take a file. It can convert the XML to an object. It can run rules against that object, reserialize that object back into a file and pass it back out. So file in, file out, and then really here, all sorts of business logic and lookup type behaviors could occur, right? I'll come to configure integration type none. I'll say call this as an API service. I could configure all sorts of properties here. But now that I've done this, I can click view. This will take me into a new tab. And what it will allow me to do is to define either the XML or JSON based representation of how to call this thing. So if I can't call this as a get because I can't make the file data fit as a URL parameter. So that's what it's calling out here. But if I wanted to call this as a post, here's my endpoint. And here is, here's my output data type. And here is the representation of what the post body of the call should look like. And then something similar, very similar really. You can see what the JSON representation of my outputs would look like. And if I wanted to, I could render this as XML or some of the other options as well. So now I have a web service that can consume and respond with a XML file that the contents of which it can modify really to your heart's content. Yeah, it's just a question of what you need to do to update. You could add, you could completely swap out the XML here, right? If you wanted to change its properties. Here, at least with the form-based one, all we're doing is changing one of the values. But you could read this in, make updates, reserialize, and send it back. Hopefully this is helpful to see, having been walked through.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Any other questions about this scenario I can answer for you? Yeah, so we post these on YouTube. So if you want to review this at a sort of more reasonable speed, please feel free. Thanks for your question, and let us know what else, what other questions you might have.
If no one else has a question right now, I would say I'm curious. Just I was creating a data type, and I noticed, I had a misspelling when I entered the name, and I couldn't find a good way to rename the data type. Is that something that's just known? You have to just destroy it and create a new one?
Yeah, we got that on our roadmap to make easier. But yes, right now you cannot rename the type. You can change the properties or the types of the properties, but you cannot rename a type after it's been created or swap from one type to another.
Okay, just wanted to verify that.
Yep, that's something we know is kind of a pain, but it is a bit of a tricky one. And so our goal is to get that done sometime this year, but it's kind of been a long requested ask. And so hopefully we'll do that. But yes, right now it is of vital importance to be very cognizant of the type name while you're creating it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if a misspelling might create a bit of rework for you.
Yeah.
So, any other questions I can answer for you?
That was the major one that I came in with. So nothing I can really think of at the moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your questions.
Sure.
All right. And who else has got questions? Anybody else have questions today? Okay, we're about almost 30 minutes in, which is normally where we'll stop if we don't have a lot of questions getting asked. So sort of last call, if you have any questions, happy to answer them for you. Okay, I think that's going to be it for today. Just last call, nursing, anything that you might want to ask? Happy to unmute you if you have a question. We can just chat about it. Probably the best place to get answers is going to be these lunch and learns. Okay. All right. Well, if that's everything for today, Maru, who is our presenter next week? Excuse me, tomorrow and Thursday.
We have Josiah and Ryan Strass.
Okay, that's Wednesday and Thursday. Josiah tomorrow. Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. All right, we got great team members on for the rest of the week. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate y'all's time. Have a great day, and I will see y'all next week. Have a great afternoon.